Hi, and welcome back to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. I am your host, Jim Nuttles, and tonight I expect ought to be entertaining. We have a couple of favorites back with a bunch of new releases. So, Scott, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm J. Scott Coatsworth. I do mostly science fiction, fantasy, and sci-fantasy with a little bit of romance, but a lot of diverse characters.
Shane?
Hi, I am Shane K. Morton. I write MM romance, MM cozy mystery, LGBTYA, and every now and then a little bit of impreg.
So, let's start by talking about what you guys are bringing in tonight with just kind of the big picture. What's the world? What's the setup? What's the universe we're going to be stepping into? So, Scott, I'll start with you on that.
Sure. So I am bringing the Hencha Queen, which I was supposed to have books. I'm actually getting tomorrow. So I do have the pretty little picture. See, it's going to look funny, but there you go. Close enough. This is the third out of four books in a YA crossover trilogy, sci-fantasy trilogy. I call it my four-book trilogy because it was supposed to be three, and then book three was just way too long, so I had to cut it into two. So basically the setup on it is there's a colony world that was colonized by essentially a bunch of white supremacists about 400 years ago. And over time, with the other people that came delivering their shipments, they sort of started to diversify and change and kind of lost that part of their heritage, which was a good thing. But they didn't realize they were sharing the world not only with one sentient species or set of species that were native to the world, but also with another alien species that had arrived a few thousand years before them. So it's basically culminating now in a battle between the native species and the humans and the other species that nobody quite realizes is there until it's almost too late. So it's three characters. You have Raven, who was the first book was kind of his introduction. They're all three in all four books. He's a gay thief who is sort of in love with the guard Ake, who's the second character who's bi, but knows it'll never work out because a thief and a guard, how does that gonna ever happen? Ake is the very loyal, not stupid, but he's just not quite as sharp as the other characters, but really good, loyal guy who is was with Celia, the third character, and now is with Ake. Oh, no, sorry, now with Raven. I was going to be with Raven, theoretically. So then the third one is Celia, who was Ake's ex-girlfriend, and she is also coming into her own as we call it the Hencha Queen, which is the title of the book, who is the woman who has direct contact with the native species. So each one of them kind of in their own way is developing and evolving and becoming different people through the story, which is why I didn't realize when I first wrote it that it was actually YA, because I had characters that were basically 17, 18 years old that were coming into their own and learning who they were, until my editor said, this is a YA book. And I'm like, oh, crap. So I embraced it, but it is, I do call it crossover because it works equally well, I think, for YA readers or for adult readers. So that's my thing I'm bringing today.
As I really want to crack a joke about stolen love between the thief and the guard. But
there you go. Nice. Raven will steal anything, so yeah.
He steals your heart.
Yes.
Shane, what have you got? Who are we killing this time? That's the important question.
I'm not killing anyone. People
right,
are just falling in love today. I started a series called Point Pleasant Holiday Series in 2019, and it's been a couple years since I actually released a book in that series, but I always knew there was going to be four more. I just took some time writing mystery before I got back to it. So the Point Pleasant Holiday Series came around because I love Hallmark movies. And I never saw myself in the Hallmark movies. Now it's a little bit different. They do actually have LGBT characters and that kind of stuff in them. But back in, 2017, 18, 19, there wasn't even a gay florist in the movies, right? So I decided to start writing my own Hallmark movies, which is how Point Pleasant got started. And this is book number 9, and it's called We All Go a Little Dad Sometimes. And it is about a 38-year-old man who hasn't dated for the last 15 years. Right out of college, his boyfriend destroyed him, broke his heart. He worked a job for a little bit, severed ties with everyone and kind of became reclusive. And one day he moves back home to Point Pleasant. Um, and then one day he's going to watch RuPaul's Drag Race with a group of older friends. And he almost runs over Taylor Lautner, or who he thinks is Taylor Lautner, right, from the Twilight movies. And he kind of just, he's like, oh my God, Taylor Lautner lives on my street, or he's visiting Point Pleasant, and eventually he comes to realize that it's not Taylor Lautner. It is a boy named Justin, who is 24 years old and is dealing with a bunch of problems and hurts of his own. And the two of them slowly come into a relationship based on their sharing of their past hurts and the compassion and joy that they start to find with each other. And of course, it is an age gap romance. So Justin's parents aren't really all that excited about the fact that he's dating kind of an older guy. But Justin knows what he wants, and he's very straightforward and goes after everything that he wants, which to David is freaking him out and scaring him to death. But eventually, the two of them figure it all out, and happily ever afters exist.
Aw.
And we stop the book there. We don't talk about the after the happily ever after, of course.
Well, now that central casting is taken care of, so let's dive a little bit deeper into them, a little bit of backstory, without, of course, giving away too much, right? So, I mean, kind of who are our happy couple? Happy for now couple, at least. Shane, sorry.
Oh, hi. That was that glazed look I said I had.
That glazed look, it's
so well.
It's gotta enjoy the love of the traffic.
So Justin is has almost failed out of college to the point that he now, because of something that happened with a professor that he started a relationship with, and then slowly discovered that the guy was married, and it kind of wound up destroying him. And so he failed out of school and had to move home with his parents, who had just relocated to Point Pleasant a year before. And he's paying for college by working a part-time job in Crystal's coffee shop. And Crystal is kind of, she's kind of the mother hen of Point Pleasant. She collects gay people. Like, she is the straight girl that every gay man knows and in town. And of course, in Point Pleasant, there's a lot of gay men. And she
So we're not
has
talking
been
West
working.
Virginia.
What?
So we're not talking.
No. Point Pleasant is I never actually say what state it's in, but lots of readers have figured it out because it, of course, is in Colorado. It's close to Denver. It's blocked off from civilization usually during the winter, except by helicopter, because it's so high up and in between, and you have to go so high up in the mountains that most of the time the snowpack is, quite heavy. So it's on a giant lake in between the mountains. So when Justin moves there, he starts working at the coffee shop, and he hates Point Pleasant. He hates that he's been forced to come home and leave college. But when you start failing out of classes, your student loans stop. So he's now forced to finish his last year remotely from Point Pleasant, paying for a class at a time, right? And David has lived in Point Pleasant for the last 3 years. David used to live in Denver, and I met a guy in college, and he calls him the devil. That's the only way that he will refer to him. He stamped on his heart with his, little feet and stabbed him with his horns. And ever since that happened, he kind of lost everything himself because he took all of their friends, and David just kind of became a recluse. And he's in IT, and so when he took a job, he lost his job in Denver, took a job with a startup, and now works remotely, and pretty much never leaves his house. but he has the most adorable dog named Liza Minnelli, which is absolutely adorable when you hear like Liza Minnelli sit. Good girl, Liza Minnelli. Liza Minnelli, no. I had fun writing that. So now he's living in Point Pleasant, still, fairly reclusive for the most part, but only hangs out with some gay men who are in their 60s and 70s every so often that have kind of adopted him and from his past, of course. And then he meets Justin, and all of their worlds both start to come undone as they kind of begin to have feelings for each other. First off, of course, it's more physical, and then it starts to get more emotional and more heartfelt. And as they open up to each other and share their struggles, their stories, their fears. And then, of course, with the help of Crystal, who is always helping our gay guys in Point Pleasant, they find their happy ever after. That was very rambling. I ramble a lot on this podcast.
So I'm picturing Deb Queer's Focus as Crystal.
Who?
Deb from Queer's Focus, Crystal.
Totally, but younger.
Yes. Okay.
So all of her friends in high school were the gay guys. So now she's 30, and the series will actually wrap up with kind of a Crystal book that won't just be a Crystal book, but the B storyline will actually be very high because everyone else has gotten their happy ever after, and Crystal really needs to get hers.
Oh, nice.
So I'm kind of excited about finishing the series one day.
Yes.
It just goes on, right? Like I thought I was originally writing a 4-book series, then it was an 8-book series, and now it will be a 12-book series, and it will be a 12-book series. Like that is, everyone will get their book, everyone will be happy, and I can move on.
Or it'll be a 16-book series or maybe a 20-book series.
And it sounds like a perfect setting during the winter for a locked room mystery.
Yeah. The cabin thing, yeah.
A little accidental murder never hurt anyone, Jim. A drag queen comes in and solves everything. Yeah. There actually is a Point Pleasant crossover with the Drag Queen Detective.
Oh, is it? Okay.
There's 2. The third Drag Queen Detective book, the third Drag Queen Detective book actually has one of the couples in it from the very first Point Pleasant book. And then there was a Point Pleasant drag queen crossover in the Side Sleuths book where 2 of my characters actually visited those characters in Point Pleasant. And of course, murder had to happen, but yeah.
Okay, good to know. As long as somebody hit the floor in Point
Pleasant. Yeah, I like to kill a few people, Jim. You know that. But there's no death in this book, I promise.
So far.
It's done.
So Scott, tell us a little bit more about who we're going to be hanging out with in this series.
Sure. So, again, I have visual aids. So Raven is my thief. He is someone that had something deeply traumatic happen to him when he was a child, lost his mother, and that figures into a lot of the stuff going forward. His kind of origin story is that very early on in the first book, he steals something that he feels compelled to steal. He opens it up and he finds out there's an egg inside, and the egg cracks and this thing comes out, and then it crawls down his throat. So hence the title of The Dragon Eater. The dragon was consensually eaten. He wasn't like, cooked in butter and garlic and then eaten. He was actually, so he kind of becomes part of who Raven is. The second character, Ake, is my loyal thief, and Kelly York from Slippy Fox Studios did the covers for me. I love her. It's really cool work. He is, again, the kind of pretty but dumb character. He knows he's not quite as smart as the others, but he is super loyal, and he's not stupid by any means. He has kind of gone through his own stuff and really just wants to go through and become a guard for the city and just get a good job and get a little bit bigger place to stay, and then fall in love with somebody and settle down and have kind of the white picket fence equivalent thing in this world. And he finds the gauntlet, which he has on here, which turns out to be an alien artifact that starts to change him. So he's going through his own little weird stuff. And then Celia, in the last book, she is basically the great granddaughter of the first Hensha queen, the first woman that was able to talk to the Hensha, which are the semi-sentient plants, which you find out then later are kind of connected to a lot of things. But she is not blood related, and everybody's always assumed she's going to become the Hensha queen one of these days. But the last one has died, and nobody else has kind of made that connection to rise in her place. So she's sort of the dog who catches the car character. Like, okay, she does actually become the Hensha Queen again pretty early on, but now what? Because I didn't really plan on this happening. I didn't really think it would. I wanted it to, but now it has. And instead of it just being this kind of prestige thing, she ends up having to figure out how to actually help save the world. So these three characters, she hates Raven because Raven basically took Egg from her, and Egg didn't come to her father's funeral because he was going to take care of something with Raven. So they kind of hate each other. But there's a lot of character growth that goes on through the series as they kind of each learn to kind of master their own things they're dealing with and become more adult and kind of deal with each other and deal with their issues. So again, this is the third one. The fourth one, we will find out what happened to poor Ake because he disappears for a while, and then, well, let's just say bad things happen. But no murders, unfortunately.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, the fourth one's yet to come. So, I mean, you can always kill somebody if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually done, and I'm going to have advanced copies early for BakeCon in July. It's coming out in September. But technically, I could still go back and kill somebody before July. So
don't do it. Don't do it. Not every book needs a murder. Those covers are absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you. Yeah, she's been great to work with. She says I'm very picky. So, but yeah, they've got that pretty kind of candy look of that some of the AI stuff has. So I have gotten a couple people like, "Oh, those AI," and I'm like, "No, I don't use AI for anything. I don't condone use of AI, especially for covers and for writing." But I do have all the receipts, so I can show if anybody wants to ask. But she does really nice work. It's a modeling app called Daz, where different artists create the characters, and then you find the characters that you like, and you can actually then license the characters from them and put them in all kinds of different poses, and you can combine characters. So if you kind of like this one and the hair from this one, you like these two faces, you can merge them. And so there's a lot of stuff you can do with it as an artist to kind of create these interesting characters. They get just what you want, as long as your author isn't too picky, which I am. But yeah.
So did she send you the like composite of the different people to look at, or do you find them yourself?
It's a little bit of both. So I'll tell her what I'm looking for. She'll find a few options. Sometimes I'll say, I'm not seeing what I like here. Can you give me the link to look? And I'll go through and find, okay, this is the one that's closest, or I like that hair and whatever. And then she'll kind of put it together. And then we just kind of go back and forth bit by bit. Because each time she does it, she has to do a full render to get the full effect once it's kind of ready. Yeah. So once that's done, then she goes back and does some painting on it to make them look a little bit less modelly, adds the extra effects and things around them. And so it's a process. It usually takes about probably a week and a half, 2 weeks, just going back and forth on and off.
Yeah, well, they're beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are. So since we've all suffered from this, that notion of it's a trilogy that's going to take 4 books. It's 4 books. It's going to take 20 to finish the entire series out. For y'all, how is it? At what point do you know that the story is going to take more? The series that it's going to take more than what you originally planned. I don't know who wants to take that one first.
I'll let Scott go first.
All right. Well, so it depends on the genre. I've written some science fiction kind of epic stuff that I'm fully comfortable going 150, 130,000 words for the book. We're not this more in a YA space, and some of the stuff that I've done that is a little more, maybe 50% romance. I tend to try to stick in the 80 to 90,000 word range. It's just kind of what seems to fit the genre best. And with like this one, when I originally wrote the first book, and I sent it to my editor, the editor said, first of all, it's YA. And they said, this is actually the first 2/3 of the book, and all you have to do is write the third book now. So I'm like, okay, so I split the first book into 2, and then I went to write the third book, but then it was super long. So I'm like, okay, then I've got to split it again. And I already contracted it with the publisher. So I went back to Steven at Water Dragon and said, can I make this third one 4? Because it's just too long. It's like already 130,000 words, and it's too long. So it's actually was 2 books that are now 4 books. But it just kind of seems like what it should fit for that genre. I did have to go back and kind of massage them a little bit because since they weren't written to those specific number of books originally, there was a little bit of like, we're kind of dropping off in the middle here feeling, and I didn't want that too much because people that have to wait, they're coming out 6 months apart in kind of more traditional old time publishing period. I didn't want it to be like a total cliffhanger in each one, and you just stop and like, wait, what? So I had to kind of work that out and kind of build in some natural endings of things in each one that would at least make you feel like you were okay to stop at that point.
So a duology of duologies.
Yes, there you go. A quadduology.
Quadduology? Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, it's my favorite trilogy. Whatever.
Great marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
What about you, Shane?
I mean, I've yet to actually finish a series, in all honesty. All three of my series are still continuing. I knew that Point Pleasant was going to end with Crystal's story wrapping up, because I've dropped things that in every book about her, so that there is this overreaching arc of her character kind of through all the books, and you discover a little bit more throughout the series. So I knew that I wanted to end Point Pleasant with Crystal's book. And then honestly, it just came to a number thing, right? Like I had written 8 books. I had 2 more that I had characters that I knew I needed to have stories for, because I had too many people asking for them. And then this book that came out of GRL, sitting in a lobby with, sitting at the bar with a couple people that really liked the series, and we were talking, and they really liked the whole age gap thing, and we started kind of just chatting about it, and they wanted this one character that I don't like at all to have a book about, another age gap book, and I kind of took that little nugget of us talking about it and created this book out of it. But I did know that I wanted to end with Crystal, so it was kind of like there were already 8. So when you're putting them together in volumes later on, 4 books to a volume with all the short stories just kind of felt more. So it felt like a 12-book series for me when I did that instead of 11. You know what I mean? So, and then for my other series, I'm still moving ahead on Bluegrass Boys and Drag Queen Detective. And I'm not sure that Drag Queen Detective actually ever has an end. I think it will just change. I mean, people always say like season 1, season 2. I'm not really into that myself personally, probably, but it's Murder, She Wrote with a drag queen. So they had 10,000 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. I can easily have 20 books.
That's a great elevator line. Elevator pitch there.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to say I was disappointed because you said I was at the bar at GRL and I was expecting you to say, and Taylor Lautner walked in.
Oh.
So I was a little disappointed there that went a different way. But
so the whole Taylor Lautner thing, I almost hit somebody during COVID on my street and thought it was Taylor Lautner.
Okay.
I mean, he looks just like him. And then I saw him get in this car and I was like, that is definitely not Taylor Lautner. He's not driving that car.
Yeah.
But I was like, God, he really, I really thought it was, I was like, oh, Taylor Lautner's visiting, because we have a few celebrities on the street, and I was like, oh, Taylor Lautner's visiting one of those people. And but then it was not him, because he got into the most beat up car. And now I know who it is, and I've seen him on the street. But I really did think it was Harry Potter. I really did think that it was Taylor Lautner for a month, because I didn't see him again. And I was like, yeah, I really almost hit Taylor Lautner with my car. He just walked out in front like he didn't see the car coming as I was on my way to the grocery store. So that's kind of where that little section of it came from, because I was kind of looking for my fun little twist into it. And I was like, oh, I should use that.
So you're going to give him a signed copy of the book for being the inspiration.
There you go.
Yeah, no.
get a picture of, with him.
He's actually a really nice guy, and his family is also very sweet. But and he was he's a child actor, so as was Taylor Lautner.
Oh, well.
Full circle.
Full circle. So I'm going to throw one bonus question out there just because, somebody left me in charge. I had no idea who was dumb enough to do that. But what was your favorite thing about writing this particular book? And Shane, I'm going to make you go first. And it can't be trying to run down your neighbor's kids.
It was really fun delving, I write huge treatments for characters before I ever kind of get into my book, because I come from writing from a playwright an actor's perspective, right? So like I always have my backstories done before I even start thinking about kind of who they are now. I kind of know the basis of what I want them to be in the book, but it's always those backstories and the hurts and all of that really kind of brings them to life for me. And really getting into David was actually quite fascinating to me, because he was so lost and terrified within his own psyche. And of course, this is a very contemporary, and it is a Hallmarkish romance. So I don't really get into that in the book, because I do want to keep that light Hallmark attitude to it. That's the whole point of the series, right? But really kind of getting into him was kind of the fascinating thing for me, and kind of the thing that kept me going on the book, because I've been writing this book for like slowly over time in between other projects for like a year and a half. Like this is one of those that I wrote 5 chapters on, and then there was a deadline for something else that I needed to work on, like a multi-author project or something. So I would put it aside, I would focus on the other book, and then I would pick it back up, and I might write a chapter before I went on to something else, right? And I thought this book was going to come out last year. And with my day job and life, I actually only ever put out 2 books last year. My last book was June of last year. So all throughout July and December, I kept thinking I was going to actually have this book and put it out by like October, then November, then December. And I just couldn't get past my own drama, right? Like, not that I was really having drama. I was just tired and didn't want to write. So I finally picked it back up in December and finished it. And when it was done, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, there you are. Like all of the crap that you went through in the past, you finally actually get this moment that is a happy ever after for you for now. Or I'll always call them happy for nows for the most part, because happy ever after, I love the concept of happy ever after, but I know romance is all about the happy ending, so I definitely get the happy ending, but the book ends, but yet their lives still have other chapters. So who knows? I've never gone back and actually written. Have you ever gone back, Scott, and actually written like a standalone that you thought and then picked it up later on with the characters again? I've always kind of thought about doing that, but I've never done it. Sorry, Jim, off topic.
It's okay.
I haven't done it with a novel length one. I'm actually working on one right now where it's taking the daughter of a couple of characters that I had written a short story before, and I'm writing a new short story based on them. And I'm not sure why I'm kind of stuck on it. It's one of those, like you're talking about, that's been sitting on my computer for about a year now, that I did part of in a few scenes and then come back and did a few more scenes, and I'm just not quite sure where it's going to end up. I do want to do it. I did the River City Chronicles, which is a kind of a Circle of Friends book since here in Sacramento, based on the idea of Tales of the City, but for our, for this city, and it was done in just before the 2016 election, and have been giving serious thought to going back with those characters now and picking up with them 10 years later, because there's kids who are in high school, because people are older, and some of them will have died, and some will have reconnected in weird ways, and so I would like to do that, just to kind of see what happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always thought of my books all live for the most part in the same worlds. So I do have characters that overlap into throughout a lot of the books, actually, like small side characters that show up here and there in a chapter or two, which is fun little things for readers and for myself. But I've always kind of wanted to go back and actually really dig into one of my first, I think my third book, and go back in and do that, like just like kind of what you're doing, like 10 years later or something. So
your readers appreciate that, I think, going back and seeing what happened.
yeah, and I would appreciate it too.
Yeah.
Just remember, if you've got that character you hate, they can always die.
Yes.
I should just kill everyone, Jim.
No, not everybody. Somebody's got to be left to tell the story.
I don't have that many people that repeat. I have a couple that repeat in other stories, but I've got a coffee shop called The Everyday Grind that shows up in a lot of my contemporary stories. So yeah.
So
it's
those little fun things. Yeah.
What was your favorite part of working on this one, Scott?
So it wasn't so much this book in particular. So like I said, I kind of worked it in mass. This is the first series that I have actually written the entire series before anything was released. It again was unintentional. I thought I was going to do the first book, send it to my editor, go through the traditional, get it ready, publish it, do the second book. And when the editor said, well, this is actually the first 2/3, and you just need to write that last one, it sounded so easy. So I actually did write the entire thing to the finish, and then was able to kind of go back in a way that I wasn't able to in my previous trilogies, and really make sure everything kind of made sense, and do some kind of foreshadowing and connections and things that I couldn't do as well if I was actually writing, releasing. And these, I think, unlike your Shane, it is one long story. And so there's not, it's not really, this is this character's book only, and then it's over, and this is this character's book. It's an entire epic story through the 4 books. So I think that it was that about it that I was able to really make it all work well together, and bring a lot of things out I might not have been able to do otherwise. And it was also just seeing the characters grow, because you start out with these characters that are basically children. They're 18-year-old children, and each one of them goes through something amazing and difficult, in some ways traumatic, and comes out the other end as an adult human being that actually is trying to do the right thing. So it was fun to kind of each book kind of play with that a little bit. And at the first part of this book, Celia is getting her staff, which is basically the equivalent of the crown. It's basically what makes her the Henching Queen, and she is just bored out of her gourd, but she's trying to it's like just a 5-minute ceremony. I can keep my cool for 5 minutes. And so she's already kind of learned a little bit to not be as rash and as difficult, but she's still going through it. And she and Raven still can't resist whenever they see each other, just kind of scarping at each other, sniping at each other. But even that, they kind of start to have a little bit of mutual respect as they see the changes in the other one. So it was really fun for me to kind of build those characters. I like when you're watching a TV series, we watched, what's that one, The Last Man on Earth, if you guys ever saw that, I think it was called. It was the one about the SNL guy who was played it, and he was this character who was all alone on Earth, and then gradually other characters came around, and his whole character stayed exactly the same through 4 seasons and never changed. And then we saw Schitt's Creek, and you have these despicable people that arrive in this town, and by the end of the series, every one of them has changed, even though not all of them changed as much, but every one of them has become a better person and a better character. And so I love when you have a story like that, where, especially over a series, that you get to see the character growth in a way. You don't just end up with the same person doing the same thing over and over again. They actually learn the lessons as they're kind of going through. So that was really rewarding for me to kind of watch that build through the series, and watch each character kind of redeem themselves.
Yeah, I fucking love that, Scott.
Thanks.
Well, before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys and the new releases. So, Scott, website, social media, and of course,
yeah. So Yeah, jscottcoatsworth.com, and it's coats like, jacket coats, and then worth like how much are you worth, which, yeah, I got a lot of that in high school. Thank you very much. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm on Mastodon. I'm no longer on Twitter for obvious reasons. And I do have a thing going. If you buy any of the books, you'll get the prequel free with Tales from Thrasis. Just email me. And the first two books my publisher has on sale at all the places in ebook format for 99 cents. So that's Dragon Eater, The Gauntlet Runner, and The Hensha Queen is out on the 14th of March. So yeah, you can find me in all those places. If you have any questions, feel free to look me up on my website and contact me.
And Shane?
You can find me at shanekmorton.com. My readers group, Shane Morton Sweet and Salty Readers. Shane Morton author on Instagram and TikTok, though I mainly just scroll on TikTok. And then I'm also, I think I still have a Twitter account, but I haven't opened it in months. So
yeah, they tell us we're supposed to be on TikTok and we're supposed to be doing videos and being influencers, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
They need to clone me if I have to do all the things.
Yes.
I need to clone.
Yeah. If you figure that out, we'll go in on get clones together.
Yeah, sure.
I've talked about the
They'll
fact
be
that
the cutest clones ever.
if I were to be cloned, it would still be basically the Highlander. There can be only one because I'm pretty sure we'd all kill it.
Okay. No, my clone would be so lazy. I know it. He would get nothing accomplished.
Well, I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight, Jim Nettles, and you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingpros.com, and here at ConTinual. And go stack up those to-be-read piles. We'll see you again soon.
Woohoo.